Okay, let's begin. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm just announced the recipients of the 2020 Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize, perhaps the most prestigious award that can be bestowed upon a human being in this world. And among this year's recipients, a number of Jews. Harvey J. Alter in medicine, Paul Milgrom in economics, Louise Gluck in literature, and then Roger Penrose and Andrea Ghez, both in physics, both of whom descend from Jews. And if you saw it, there was a video that went viral this week from the door cam of Paul Milgrom, who was just awarded the Nobel Prize in economics, together with Robert B. Wilson for improvements to auction theory and inventions of new auction formats. Don't ask me what auction theory is. But when the Nobel Prize committee couldn't reach him, his neighbor from across the street in the middle of the night rings his doorbell to share with him the good news. And what did everyone notice? The big mezuzah on Milgrom's door. So among the 11 of this year's Nobel Prize laureates, 3 are Jewish and 2 have Jewish ancestry. So almost 50% of this year's Nobel Prize recipients are Jews or share Jewish ancestry. That's pretty incredible. But as many of you know, since its inception, Jews have received Nobel Prizes in all 6 categories: chemistry, medicine, physics, literature, economics, peace. We Jews make up only 0.2% of the world's total population. That's less than 1%. 0.2% of the world's total population. Yet we make up 22% of all Nobel Prize laureates. And that's incredible. We make up less than 0.2% of the world's total population, yet we make up 22% of all Nobel Prize recipients. And if you break it down by field, in some fields, we're even more than 22%. 40% of Nobel Prize recipients in economics are Jews, 26% in physics, 26% in medicine. How? How is it possible that the Jewish people represent such a small minority, such a small percentage of the world's overall population, yet we represent such a large and significant percent of Nobel Prize recipients? It's so disproportionate. How do we account for it? How do we reconcile it? It doesn't make sense. And here in the modern state of Israel, we've been fortunate to see tremendous success. The modern state of Israel has been called the startup nation. In the 2009 New York Times bestseller by the same name, authors Dan Senor and Saul Singer attempt to explain how, against all odds, the state of Israel, a young country facing tremendous challenges, has more startups, research and development, and a larger venture capital industry per capita than any other country in the world. At the time the book was published, there were 63 Israeli companies that were listed on the NASDAQ, more companies than any other foreign country. And today, Israel is at the forefront of so much innovation in high tech, energy, agriculture, engineering, and research in so many fields of science and medicine. As you all know, Israel is at the forefront in research of COVID treatments and vaccines. Unfortunately, now we're at the forefront of infections. But Israel, since the beginning, has been at the forefront in research and development of COVID treatments and vaccines. People often joke that if the BDS movement really took itself seriously, its supporters would have to give up much of the technology and medicine that they're already currently benefiting from, as most likely some part of it was developed here in Israel. You don't like Israel? You want to boycott Israel? You want to divest from Israel? Okay, so take that cell phone out of your pocket and toss it in the trash. Or you don't like Israel, so take that disk on key, that flash drive that you're using in your computer, and toss it in the bin. We are at the forefront of so much innovation, so much development in science, in medicine, and technology. It's incredible. And we also like to brag. We like to give ourselves a pat on our back, or pat on our proverbial back here in Israel. If you have been to the Ben Gurion Airport in recent years. Now everything's shut down, unfortunately. But before the pandemic, I used to travel often, and I would always, on my way to the following passport control and security, on my way to the terminal or to the gates, really. Really on my way to duty-free shopping. No. But you walk down this long hallway, and on the wall you have pictures of so much innovation and all of these companies that have been developed in Israel and all of these incredible innovations and technologies that have been developed here in Israel. And we like to brag, and even you have pictures of Nobel Prize recipients. And since 1966, there have been 12 Israelis who've been awarded Nobel Prizes. Israel, in fact, has more Nobel Prizes per capita, or Nobel Prize recipients per capita, than the United States, France, and Germany. There's more laureates in real numbers, not per capita, but in actual numbers, than India, Spain, and China. And what's great about Israel is you could just be minding your own business, walking through the airport, sitting in a cafe, walking through Shuk Machane Yehuda, and bump into a Nobel Prize laureate. It's happened to me a number of times. About a year ago, I'm with my wife on a Friday having some coffee by Machane Yehuda, and who do we see? Professor Yisrael Aumann, doing his Erev Shabbos shopping with his Shuk cart. You have the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2005 for his work on conflict and cooperation through game theory analysis. Again, don't ask me to explain what game theory is, but there he is, just minding his own business, doing his Shabbos shopping. And in fact, one time it was funny or really kind of ironic. I was speaking in a shul in the heart of Jerusalem. There I am, scholar in residence, and sitting right in front of me there in the shul is Yisrael Aumann, a Nobel Prize laureate, and there I'm the scholar. I thought that was a little ironic, but and all of these successes, all of these tremendous successes and innovations have, of course, been in the face of the constant threat of war and terrorism. How is little Israel at the forefront of so much innovation, technology, medicine? What drives us to succeed, and what is the secret to our success? So I think the answer to all of these questions is found in our parasha, in the story of creation, or more accurately, in the two different accounts of the story of creation in Bereshit. And I'll put up the sources that we'll explore together this morning. So you take a look at source number one. This is from Bereshit Perek Aleph. I trust you can all see the sources. Okay. This is the first account of creation. Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tzelmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. Hashem created man in his image, in the image of God. He made him, he formed him, he created him. Male and female, together he created them. Vayivarech otam Elokim. And then Hashem blesses man and really charges mankind with the first commandment, the first mitzvah given to all of mankind. Vayomer lahem, and he says to them, Elokim, God says to them, Pru uruvu umilu et haaretz v'chivshuha. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth v'chivshuha. How would you translate v'chivshuha? Conquer it, dominate over it. Urdu bidgat hayam uve'of hashamayim uvechol chaya haromeset al haaretz. Pasuk continues that you shall subjugate or dominate the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and all the animals and creatures that crawl upon this earth. What does the Torah mean when it tells us to be fruitful and multiply and v'chivshuha, conquer the world, subjugate the world? What does that mean? Really informs our discussion together this morning. So the Ramban explains that what v'chivshuha means here in source number 2. Natan lahem koach u'memshala ba'aretz, that Hashem gave man the power, the dominion, the authority, really, over the earth. Lasot kirtzonam, to do as they wish. Babehemot u'bashratzim v'chol zochalei afar, with all sorts of animals and creepy crawlers, shratzim, zochalei afar. Hashem gave man dominion over all the inhabitants of the earth. Hashem gave mankind the authority over the rest of the world, the animal kingdom, if you will, to do as he wish. To do as he wish. Well, we're going to have to define what that means. What does it mean, lasot kirtzonam? Are there gvulot? Are there boundaries or limitations to that? Ulivnot, and to build. To utilize the resources of this world. To build, to create, v'la'akor natua, and even to uproot that which is planted. Meaning, Hashem, who placed man into a world that was already finished, completed. We'll come back to that idea a little later on this morning, but Hashem, who planted man into this world that had trees and animals and resources, Hashem says, you can even uproot these trees. You can utilize these resources for your benefit. Umehareha, and from its mountains, the Ramban continues, lachtzov nechoshet, in order to mine copper, ukiyotze bazeh, and the like. The Ramban, of course, is giving a number of examples, but it's not exhaustive. This list is not exhaustive. The Ramban explains that Hashem places man in this world with all of its resources and tells mankind to conquer this world, meaning to utilize the resources of this world. Man is given the authority. Man is, as pinnacle of the creation, man is endowed by his creator, bestowed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the authority to utilize the resources of this world. Okay? And to even what would appear at first glance to be destruction, to uproot, to destroy, or to take the resources, to mine the resources from the mountains, to take out, that also is included in this commandment to conquer the world, to subjugate the world. Man is given dominion over the world. Okay, now with that, of course, comes tremendous responsibility, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the Ramban here continues, and he concludes and says, "V'zeh yichlol ma she'amar u'v'chol haaretz," and that's what it means when the pasuk says that Hashem gives man dominion over the entire world, the entire earth. Okay, it includes all of the resources. The list is not exhaustive. Now that is a tremendous responsibility. This charge to mankind, that man is to utilize the resources of this earth in order to create, to innovate, to benefit himself, to benefit mankind, well, that comes with a tremendous responsibility. And that, of course, is Breshit Perek Bet, the second chapter of Genesis. That's where the story of creation is retold or recounted. Okay, so if you take a look here in source number 3, now there's a lot to say. We're just going to touch on the Roshei Prakim, but you could spend a lot of time examining the differences between the first account of creation in Breshit Perek Aleph and the second account of creation in Breshit Perek Bet, and it's absolutely fascinating. Now, that, of course, gave fodder, if you will, to Bible critics who suggested, chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, that there's multiple authorship, that there are 2 different authors. That's why you have differences in the first account of creation and the second account of creation. But as Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, and as many have pointed out, but Soloveitchik, we're going to come to in a few moments, in his famous monograph, The Lonely Man of Faith, well, Chazal were already familiar with this. This is not something that the Bible critics invented, or this is not something that was first discussed or mentioned by the Bible critics, but Chazal and the Mefarshim, the Parshanei Mikra, are already sensitive to this, to the fact that we have two different accounts of the story of creation, and that there are differences and there are nuances here. And that doesn't mean that there are multiple authors, chas v'shalom, to our Holy Torah. What it means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to learn lessons from the fact that there are two different accounts of the story of creation, that we have to read the text very closely, pay attention to the nuances, and pay attention to the differences, and learn things from them, and glean things from them. Okay, so in Perek Bet, here in source number 3, here HaKadosh Baruch Hu places man in Gan Eden, and here the purpose is explicit. Vayikach Hashem Elokim et Adam. Hashem, God, takes man, vaynicheu v'Gan Eden, and he places him in the Garden of Eden. Why? For what purpose? Le'ovda u'leshomra. To work the garden, to till its soil, and what's very important for our discussion this morning, u'leshomra, and to protect the garden. This, of course, speaks to man's responsibility to protect his world. L'ovda, to work, to build, to create, to utilize the resources of this world. Like the Ramban explains, man is given the authority to utilize the resources. He can harness the technology. He can build, he can create, but he also has a responsibility, l'shomra, to watch over the garden, to protect the garden, to preserve the garden, to preserve this world. Okay, so the command, v'chivshuha, to subjugate, to dominate, to rule over, to conquer, that is tempered with the commandment, l'shomra, to preserve and protect. In one word, responsibility. So yes, on the one hand, man is given the authority and the power and the dominion to subjugate, to conquer, to utilize, to harness, to build, to create, to innovate. But he has to be careful. He has to be aware. There are limits. There are boundaries. He cannot destroy the world in the process. Okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're going to come back to this a little later on this morning, wants man to partner with him in the very act of creation, but there are limits. And that's very important. Now, I already mentioned Rav Soloveitchik. In Rav Soloveitchik's famous monograph, The Lonely Man of Faith, Rav Soloveitchik contrasts these two different accounts of creation. He draws on these two different accounts of creation. As I said, he's not the first one to do that. Chazal are sensitive to this. The Parshanei HaMikra, the Mefarshim are already doing this. Even the Bible critics and philosophers are already doing this. But Rav Soloveitchik very originally and creatively draws on these two different accounts of creation in his Lonely Man of Faith, and speaks about man's responsibility to his fellow man. You know, he draws on these two different accounts of creation and argues that the man of faith must integrate both of these ideals as he seeks to serve his creator. And he's sensitive to the intentions of man in the first account with the intentions of man in the second account. And he creates this typology. For those of you who are familiar with this famous monograph, this famous essay, The Lonely Man of Faith, you know that he has his Adam 1 and his Adam 2. Adam in the first account of creation in Breshit Perek Aleph, and Adam 2 in Breshit Perek Bet. Okay, and one of the things that he's sensitive to, here I put just a small passage in source number 4 in Hebrew, the essay in Hebrew, lonely man of faith, he writes the following, where I've underlined. Okay. Sha'ah shebireich Hashem et Adam harishon, v'hitil alav lichbosh et hateva. At the time that Hashem blesses man, the first man, Adam 1, okay, this is in Bereshit Perek Aleph, and he commands him, or places upon him the command to subjugate nature, to control nature, lichbosh et hateva, to harness and to dominate over and to conquer nature for his benefit. Kiven oto el hatchunot hama'asiyot shel hasechel shebe'emtzaotam yishtalet al hateva. He directs him, as I explained before, in the ways of, again, ruling over nature. Man is master over his world. In Bereshit Perek Aleph, man is given a mastery over the world. He's endowed by his creator with a mastery over the world, over the creatures of the world, over the resources of the world. Hadam Rishon me'unyan efo rak b'tzad echad shel hametziut. But what Rav Soloveitchik suggests here, and this is the difference between Adam 1 and Adam 2, that Adam 1, who represents this first account of creation, he's only interested in one aspect of the reality of harnessing the creation, of being a master over the world. He's only interested in how it works. How does the universe work? But he's not interested in the meaning behind it, the essence of it. He's only concerned, says Rav Soloveitchik, with one question alone. It's a very practical question, a very technical question. How? Sholetet bo mishala achat, lichbosh et hakochot hativ'im, lishlot behem, ulahmidam lirshut atzmo. He's only concerned with one concern: dominating over the world, subjugating the world, conquering the natural forces of this world, the kochot hativ'im, the natural forces, lishlot bahem, to rule over them, to control them, ulamidam lirshut atzmo, and to uphold them, or to utilize them, really, for his own personal benefit. Okay, that is Rav Soloveitchik's critique of modern man. He's, again, utilizing or drawing on the first account of creation to create a typology and criticize modern man. Modern man, represented by Adam 1, he's only concerned with the question of how. How do you do it? Not why. He's not concerned with the bigger questions of why, for what grander purpose or grander scheme, but how. It's, halacha l'maisa, it's very ma'asit, he writes. Right? Very technit, very technical. How do you do it? How do you take these resources of the world and create and build with them? But the criticism is that modern man doesn't ask the question of why, for what purpose. And that's why, according to Rav Soloveitchik, you need the second account of creation, represented by Adam 2. In the second parak of Bereshit, all of a sudden, it's very different. Very different. Man, according to Rav Soloveitchik, in the second account, Adam 2, is struggling with the question of why, for what greater purpose, right? Why did Hashem create man and place him in this world? What is our responsibility to our world, and what is our responsibility to each other? Because in Perek Bet, man, all of a sudden, he's a social being. He's looking for companionship among the other creations of the world, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a helpmate for him. He creates Chava for him. It's not good for man to be alone, Hashem says. Selo ezer knegdo. I will make a helpmate for him, to challenge him, inspire him. Okay? So man is a social being. So all of a sudden, in the second account of creation, man is grappling with the bigger questions. Why? What's it all all for? What's the purpose of it all? He's struggling to understand his place in the world in relation with his creator, in relation to his fellow man. And so here he writes, Hadam Hasheni, Adam 2. Hu rotza ladat, he wants to know, where I've underlined, Madua, why? Mahu, mihu, right? What's it all about? Hu shoel, he asks, Ma tachlitam shel kol eila, what is the purpose of all of this? There must be a purpose, a reason, a rhyme behind this grand design. Ma mashmaut ha'etgar hagadol hamegia elai me'ever ligvulot ha'universe kimo ma'makei nishmati hamitlabetet. What is the meaning of this great challenge that comes to me that's beyond the boundaries of this universe, like the depths of my soul that is struggling, right? All of a sudden, he's trying to understand himself in relationship with his creator. Is there a spiritual dimension to all of this? So Adam 1 asks the question, how? Adam 2 asks the question, why? What's it all for? What's the grander purpose? What does Hashem have in mind for me? And Adam 2 is struggling with the question of how do I relate to my creator and how do I relate to my fellow man? Adam 2 understands a sense of responsibility, okay? Adam 2 is commanded with Lishomra, to guard the garden, to protect the garden, to preserve this earth. Okay, there's responsibility. He has a responsibility to his world, a responsibility to his creator, a responsibility to his fellow man. Now, as I mentioned, Rav Soloveitchik draws on these two different accounts of creation in this very philosophical essay and argues that the man of faith must integrate both of these ideals in order to serve Hashem. But it's interesting, he titles his essay, The Lonely Man of Faith, because the individual that is struggling with these questions, the individual that is seeking to integrate both of these ideals is lonely. It's rare. Most people today, if you look at our world, you look what's going on in so much of the world, especially in places like China, where there's such a focus on creating and on producing at the expense of the environment, right? There's so much pollution and toxins at the expense of their fellow man, right? Why are things so cheap that are produced in China? Well, because they don't pay people a living wage, and because maybe they utilize child labor. Okay, so Rav Soloveitchik's critique of modern man is that they focus on the question of how. How do we do it? How do we build? But they forget about the question of why. Now, Rav Soloveitchik doesn't mention the space race or John F. Kennedy, but when I first read The Lonely Man of Faith, I couldn't help but thinking of Kennedy's famous speech, "We will go to the moon," or that famous speech where he says, "We will go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard," right? He's from Massachusetts. He's got that thick Bostonian Brahmin accent, hard. So the first time I studied this essay, The Lonely Man of Faith, I couldn't help but think of the space race. And here in the 1960s, you have the United States so focused on putting a man on the moon, right? But why? For what purpose, right? Was it just to outsmart the Soviets? This was during the Cold War, of course. And there was this space race to see if the United States was going to put a man on the moon before the Soviet Union. So what's the whole purpose behind putting a man on the moon? Is it just to best the Soviets, to get the upper hand in this Cold War? What was the point behind it? Now, I don't know. I don't really know, or I'm not going to claim to truly understand the intentions behind it all. But if the whole point is just about the question of how, well, this is exactly what Rav Soloveitchik is saying. We're missing the question of why. What is the ultimate purpose? How is that going to benefit mankind? Ultimately, if the focus is on just the how, that's very Machiavellian. It's going to ultimately focus on getting to the goal by all means. And if the focus is just on the how and on creating and innovating without the focus on the why, what purpose, and on the focus on understanding how ultimately it can benefit or hurt mankind. So yes, you are fulfilling the first commandment to mankind, the first command of conquering and mastering and subjugating and harnessing and ruling over, but you're forgetting about the commandment in the second chapter of Breshit, how it's formulated in the second chapter of Breshit, that yes, we're there to create, but also to protect and preserve. Okay, so that ultimately is this question that modern man struggles with. That's this very, very tension. And according to Soloveitchik, ultimately we're to integrate both of these ideals, to create, to build, to innovate, to subjugate, to harness, to conquer, to utilize all of these resources. But again, l'ovda u'l'shomra, second paragraph of Breshit says that first command has to be balanced or meted with or tempered by the commandment to work the garden, to till its soil, yes, to grow and to build and to innovate, but also to preserve, to protect. Okay, otherwise there won't be anything left. Otherwise we will ruin our world, we will destroy our world, we will ultimately take advantage of our fellow man, hurt our fellow man. Okay. So another theme that dovetails very nicely with this, another theme in the thought of Rav Soloveitchik, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu left just a little bit of his world unfinished, undone, incomplete, left for us to complete. And in doing so, we become a partner with Hashem in the very act of creation. And this, now we have to look at a passage in Ish HaHalacha, his famous essay or monograph, Halachic Man. He writes the following. Okay. Let's put it back up. Okay, I trust you can all see the source sheets. This is source number 5, at the end of the page here. He writes the following. Kishe ha'adam golat ha'koteret shel habriya ba'al ha'olam, when man, who is the pinnacle of creation, the crowning glory of the cosmos, approaches this world. Okay. Te'udato bi'ado, te'udat hayitzira, the task at hand, the task that's given to him, is the task of creation. Now it's significant, as we read together this morning, Hashem creates man b'tselem Elokim. Man is created in the image of God, right? If you go back here to source number 1, Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzelmo, b'tselem Elokim bara oto. Man is created in the image of God. What does that mean? What it means is that just as Hashem is creator, man too is endowed by his creator with the capacity to create. It's a major theme in the essay Ish Halacha, man's capacity to create, his capacity for creativity. Man is a creator. Man, being created in the image of God, is endowed by his creator with this capacity to create. Okay? Te'udat hayitzira. Chayavhu la'amod al mishmar hahavaya hazacha v'hatehora. So therefore he is obligated, he is chayav to stand on guard over the pure, clear existence of this creation. Lahashlim et hapigam shebim'aseh bereshit. In order to fulfill or to really complete, lahashlim, to complete and perfect the pigam. Wow, the pigam shebim'aseh bereshit, the defect, literally the defect in the creation. There is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he created the world, intentionally left out, says Rav Soloveitchik. There is some sort of defect in the creation that needs to be repaired. Et hachaser shebefoal ve'et hane'edar shebayeshut. This is incredible. Man has to fill in the gaps, so to speak, fill the void. What is chaser? What is missing in creation? Okay? That's an incredible idea. What is hidden, what is left out in the reality of this world? Again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu intentionally left this world undone. Now, you have this idea echoed by the Kabbalists in Lurianic Kabbalah, for example. There's this notion of tikkun, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu intentionally left this world unfinished or incomplete, and there is some sort of defect that needs to be repaired. We live in a world of tikkun, a world that needs to be repaired, a world of fixing or rectification. Okay, and that is what Rav Soloveitchik is drawing on here. Hayitzur mitzuveh lishtatef im hayotzer shebechidush ma'aseh bereshit. The created man, the creature, okay, he who is created is obligated, is commanded to partner with the creator, capital C, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the renewal of the cosmos. This is an incredible idea. Bechidush ma'aseh bereshit, in the renewal of the creation of the world. Yitzira gmura ushlema zoi she'ifat ha-she'ifot shel Knesset Yisrael. This really goes to the heart of our discussion this morning. A complete and perfect creation, that ultimately is the desire, that is the wish, that is the dream, that is the aspiration of Knesset Yisrael, of the Jewish people. Now, the truth is, it's the aspiration of the entire world, not just the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives this commandment to all of mankind. The commandment of V'chivshuha, together with the commandment of L'ovda L'shamra, is given to all of mankind. But as Jews, it's part of our very DNA. Being a contributing member of society is such an important value in Judaism. Just one example I was thinking of. The Gemara explains in Sanhedrin and Daf Chav Daled that a professional gambler, for example, is invalid as a witness. He can't serve as an aid. Why? Because he doesn't contribute to the Yeshuvu Shel Olam, the welfare of this world. He doesn't do anything to contribute to the world, to benefit the world. He's sitting there gambling. Okay, and the Rambam brings this down in Hilchot Edut, in the 10th parak there, in Shulchan Aruch, in Choshen Mishpat, in Siman Lamed Daled, also mentions that a professional gambler cannot serve as an aid, as a witness, because contributing to society is such an important tenet of Judaism. Contributing to humanity is part and parcel of the very fiber of our being. It's the fabric of who we are. It's encoded in our DNA. And I think that is ultimately the secret to our success. It's why the Jewish people, while making up less than 1% of the world's total population, only 0.2%, yet we make up over 22% of all Nobel Prize winners, as we mentioned at the beginning. It's incredible. How do you reconcile that? We make up only 0.2% of the overall population of the world, yet we make up over 22% of Nobel Prize winners. And then, as I said, if you break it down by field, the numbers are dramatic. I mean, it's mind-boggling. In some fields, we're even more than 22%, 40% in economics, 26% in physics, 26% in medicine. This is what drives the Jew to contribute to humanity. We understand that, yes, Hashem placed us in this world and told us to conquer our natural environment, to utilize the resources of this world, to harness its technologies, and to build. But we understand that we have a responsibility to use those God-given talents and to use those God-given resources in order to benefit our world. Not just to innovate for the sake of innovating, not just to build for the sake of building, not just to ask the question of how, like Adam 1, but to ask the question of why, like Adam 2, in Rav Soloveitchik's essay, Lonely Man of Faith, to understand our responsibility to benefit this world, to understand our responsibility of why Hashem gave us these talents and placed us in this world and gave us these resources and told us to create, ultimately to innovate, not just for the sake of innovating and not just build to stroke our ego or for the sake of building, but to understand why we're doing it and to utilize it to benefit mankind. And with that comes tremendous responsibility. We have an obligation, yes, to till the soil of this garden, but also to preserve it, to protect it. And so I think that explains why the Jewish people have been so successful in so many different fields and industries, why we are driven to build and to innovate and to create, but not just to innovate for the sake of innovation, but for the sake of benefiting mankind. And I think that's why here in the very small state of Israel, in the very young state of Israel, with all of the challenges that we have faced and that we continue to face, the constant threat of war and terror and just all of the challenges that we face, how in the face of all those challenges, we've been so successful at creating and innovating and building in so many different fields and industries and technologies, research and medicine. I think it's this very concept, these very ideas and ideals which inspire us, which compel us to innovate, to create, and better mankind. I think the secret to our success is found in this week's parasha, in the story of Breshit. I will unmute all the participants and take any questions. Okay. Any questions? Questions, comments, complaints, that's okay too, if anyone has complaints. Okay, if not, I will wish you all a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting share.
Thank you.
Thank you.